Hello, let me introduce myself. My name is Monika Sinaga. My number academic is 22010300221 from English Department, University HKBP Nommensen, pematang siantar. And here now I want to explain you about a debate. So, what is debate? Debate is a verbal interaction between two or more individuals who has different views on an issue or a topic. In the debate, each party tries to convince the listener or audience that their viewers or argument is the stronger and worthy of consideration. So, what to the function? The function is to acquire critical thinking, practice speaking skills, sharpen listening skills, and the stronger self-confidence. And how about the purpose? The purpose is to opening information, shaping arguments, influencing opinion, and the characteristic is formal structure, arguments and evidence, opinion, and moderator. And the types of debate is so many. But now I want to explain you only one style, so that is British parliamentary style. The British parliamentary debate style is the most popular style or encouraged debating in the world. And the style used at the annual World University Debating Championship. Some people refer to British parliamentary as world. So, British parliamentary have 4 teams, but every team have 2 speakers, 1 moderators, educator, and timekeeper. So now I want to explain you about the structure. The structure is the first is a motion. Motion is a topic, a issue, a problem, things in the debate. Motion is 2. The first is prior motion. Itu adalah topik debat yang kita ketahui jauh sebelum debat akan berlangsung, jauh hari sebelum debat akan berlangsung. Sedangkan impromptu motion itu adalah topik debat yang kita ketahui pada saat debat akan berlangsung. A moderator is someone who guide the course of the debate, and the jury is the person who guide judgment and follow the course of the debate. Untuk juri sendiri itu terdiri dari 3 orang yaitu manner, method, and matter. Untuk matter sendiri itu adalah untuk menilai isi, sedangkan manner itu untuk menilai sikap kita pada saat berdebat. Itu sikap maksudnya kayak tata bahasa pada saat kita berdebat, seperti itu. And method itu metode kita, tata cara kita menyusun dan merangkai kata-kata yang akan disampaikan pada saat debat akan berlangsung, seperti itu. And the timekeeper is one of the community taken with monitoring the time flow of the debate. So in the British parliamentary debate have a POI. What is POI? POI itu adalah sebuah pernyataan atau interupsi kayak pertanyaan kepada tim lawan. Di sini caranya untuk menyampaikan POI itu seperti kayak POI please, and tim yang berpidato dapat menerima atau menolak POI tersebut. Namun disarankan untuk menerima 2 POI. Jika tidak menerima POI sama sekali, that's not British parliamentary, because British parliamentary is identical to POI, right? POI sendiri untuk time-nya ketika berpidato pada menit pertama, moderator akan mengetuk palu yang dimana POI dibuka setelah menit pertama dan akan ditutup 1 menit sebelum pidato akan selesai. Nah, ini kan setiap member or speaker have 7 minutes to give untuk berpidato seperti itu. Dan di menit kedua sampai ke menit kelima POI akan dibuka. Pada menit ke-6 juri akan mengetuk palu yang menandakan bahwa POI ditutup. Tidak akan ada sistem POI seperti itu. Dan untuk POI sendiri itu disampaikan hanya 15 menit, tidak lebih. Alright, so now I want to explain you about di dalam persiapan. Dalam persiapan itu biasanya ada case building, yang dimana setelah kita menentukan motion, maka akan ada case building selama 15 menit, yang dimana setiap anggota debat akan melakukan persiapan seperti persiapan materi ataupun argumen-argumen yang akan disampaikan. Namun di dalam persiapan tidak diperbolehkan untuk menggunakan alat elektronik seperti HP dan juga laptop. Alright, so now I want to explain you about the rules of the debate. Rules of the debate sendiri itu terdiri dari 4 tim, dan setiap tim itu punya 2 speakers masing-masingnya. And the first team is opening government. Opening government have 2 members. The first speakers is Prime Minister, and the second speakers is Deputy Prime Minister. And the opening opposition is the first speaker is leader of opposition. The second speaker is the party leader of opposition. The third team is closing government. The first speaker is member of government, and the last speaker is government whip. And the last team is closing opposition. The first speaker is member of opposition, and the second speaker is opposition whip. Now, aku akan menjelaskan tugas-tugas dari setiap. Sebelumnya menjelaskan aturan mainnya. Seperti the first speakers untuk menyampaikan pidatonya adalah Prime Minister, kemudian disanggah oleh Leader of Opposition, and then the party Prime Minister, and the party Leader of Opposition, and then Member of Government disanggah oleh Member of Opposition, and the next is Government Whip, and the last speakers is Opposition Whip. Okay, now I want to explain you about the setiap tugas-tugas dari setiap members. The first speakers is Prime Minister. Nah, setelah motion telah diberikan, maka orang yang pertama kali akan berpidato yaitu Prime Minister dari opening opposition. Dari opening government. Dan di sini kan government itu adalah tim yang setuju, sementara opposition adalah tim yang tidak setuju dengan motion tersebut, seperti itu. And the first speakers have a task too. The Prime Minister is untuk menyampaikan pidatonya seperti definisi, memberikan argumen, 1-2 argumen yang kuat yang menyetujui pada motion tersebut. Kemudian disanggah oleh Leader of Opposition. Leader of Opposition di sini akan respond directly to Prime Minister argument and give 2 or 3 arguments. And next is the party Prime Minister to respond to leaders of opposition arguments, the Prime Minister's arguments against leader of opposition arguments, and at the last 1K new arguments, plus a possible or not. And the next is the party leader of opposition. The first is to respond to the party Prime Ministers, give defeat leader of opposition's arguments, and provide 1 or 2 new arguments. And the next speakers itu kan jadinya seperti 2 session, opening and closing. And now in the closing is member of government. See, the first is to reverse of opposition, especially the party leader of opposition arguments, make 2 or 3 new arguments. Dan di sini dia akan membawakan isu-isu baru yang namun tetap mendukung dari government seperti itu, and provide for more detail on opening government arguments. And the next is from the opposition. The first speaker's closing is member of opposition. The text is to reverse member of government extension. Make 2 or 3 extension arguments. And the next is government whip. Di sini itu tugas mereka tugas government whip dan opposition whip itu sebagai summary speakers, di mana mereka akan mencatat hasil dari pendapat-pendapat dari opening government dan member of government dari tim government sendiri. Sementara dari tim opposition seperti itu juga menyimpulkan dari opening opposition and member of opposition. That's it. But now government whip is to respond directly to member of opposition arguments, to summary debate, explaining why government whip, but expressing in particular the arguments you brought in the closing government, and should not bring up any new arguments. Di sini government whip dan opposition whip itu tidak bisa membawakan new issue karena mereka di sini tugasnya adalah menyimpulkan. And about the opposition whip, to defeat member opposition's extension against government whip's rebuttal, to summary debate expressing, and should not bring up new arguments. So that's it about the British parliamentary debate. But now I want to give you one example from YouTube. So before it, I say thank you and sorry for maybe I have a many mistaken. See ya.
In opening government, we have Bina Nusantara, Stella as Prime Minister, William as Deputy Prime Minister. In opening opposition, we have Universitas Brawijaya, Lady acting as the leader of opposition, Afdal as Deputy Leader of Opposition. In closing government, we have Universitas Indonesia. Member of government is Gabriel, and government whip is Revaldi. In closing opposition, we have Universitas Gajah Mada. Acting as member of opposition is Arianda. And as opposition whip is Aldila. Judging this round will be me, Anggia, as your chair, and then I'm accompanied by Edward from Undip, Karyo from Matma, Lutfi from ITB, Omar from Unpad, Kevin from Unhas, and Satrio from Undip. So, without further ado, under the motions of this House believes that separatist movements in Eastern Indonesia, for example, Republik Maluku Selatan, Organisasi Papua Merdeka, Gerakan Sulawesi Merdeka, should unite, take arms, and conduct a violent revolution to secede from the Republic of Indonesia. So, to open the case of government, I'd like to welcome Prime Minister Stella. sit down and wait for Indonesian people to come as our white savior. But it will not happen. We're still being discriminated. We're still going to be oppressed anyway. We think it's time for us to send the new narrative to them. Let go, because we're different and you will never be able to understand us anyway. That's why we think it is important when you know that you're different and you will never ever become unity anyway. That's when we can have a violent revolution. So real point of model in mind in opening government. Firstly, we will attack on any kind of Indonesian border that we see. Secondly, we will also make sure that we keep reminding them on all human rights violation that they have committed to us, be it killing us in our villages, even though we are only peaceful human beings, just like Japanese, just like other Chinese, just like that. We need to remind them that we will not back down. And we think the question on whether or not they will unite is that they will unite, Mr. and Madam Chair, because these Eastern Indonesian people most likely share the common characteristic of being colonized by the state of Indonesia, and therefore we think they will be able to unite. And the next step after that secede is to be discussed. Whether or not they will make new federal state, or whether or not they want to make independent state, that's another debate. But the question would be whether or not it is justified and whether or not it will be effective for you to do violent revolution. Would you think it is very important? My first issue on how our current status quo will never work if you only rely on yourself or on Indonesia. My first issue on how it will not work if you work by yourself. The most ideal way for you to succeed is to have diplomacy. In the current ways of Eastern Indonesia, we have an organization called MSG, which is the Melanesian Spearhead Group. Basically, this is like an ASEAN, but for Melanesian country, i.e. New Guinea, i.e. Solomon, and other like Melanesian country, right? Which have like different characteristics with just different, with just our Melayu. We think like this is our very like good chance for us to get diplomacy and economic ties. But guess what? Because Indonesia right now is already being registered in MSG as an observer, Papua or other Eastern country cannot apply independently to MSG, meaning that they only rely on Indonesia as their umbrella, but not being able to pursue the economic ties, to pursue the diplomacy ties, because simply Indonesia is only a member state. Because again, Indonesia is not fully Melanesian. Therefore, the MSG is reluctant to give us the full membership towards Indonesia. What does it tell you? It tells you that you cannot pursue your own diplomacy just because you're still in the same umbrella as Indonesia to begin with. Therefore, it is impossible for you to have a utopic heaven of having economical ties towards them. That's why in the case of first diplomacy, it cannot work. But secondly, what have we tried as Eastern Indonesian people? We have tried to do non-violent protests. Because unlike popular opinions, we are as civilized at what you might want you to believe in, right? But what do we get after we do non-violent protests by our movement? We got arrested. Just because we have different race, just because we have different skin color. What does it tell to you? It tells to you all along with the excessive force, not only in Indonesia and in Jogja, for example, our love to Indonesia is not being reciprocated because simply we're different from them, and that's why we're always being talked like bad names inside of them, right? It tells to you that non-violent protests do not give us love back from Indonesia. That's why we think if you rely on ourselves as Eastern Indonesian, we will not go anywhere. But we have our second hope, which is Indonesia. But we will tell you why then you will not get your independence and your ideal economic situation if you only rely on Indonesia. The reason is simple, because Indonesia always failed to see our inherent differences, because we always thought about Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, that somehow we are the same. Guess what? People, it is not the same. We think these inherent characteristics are the one who fails Indonesia to recognize that we are different, that maybe we cannot eat rice but we eat other things, but they think just because we're different then they are scared of us, and they think that we are different and weird. What does Indonesia has do in current status quo? They do two things. Firstly, they try to make a Melanian culture festival, which means to appeal us to make sure that we to make sure and glorify to the world that Indonesia is actually doing good things toward Melanesian people.
But the funny thing is that in that Millennium Culture Festival, Indonesia do not even include Eastern Indonesian people. Instead, they invite NTT people, which is Polynesian. This is another race other than Melanesian. Even though they will look characteristically the same a little bit, but we are not the same. But the failure in Indonesia to acknowledge the Melanistic culture and characteristic shows to you that Indonesia do not see us as a human being, but only as an economic entity that you can use when you please, but you do not fail to understand what is us at the end of the day. Therefore, we think these inherent characteristics that they fail to see is something that makes us even depressed inside of the status quo, because they always see that we are the same and we should be the same. We are not before that.
Today, every province has right to govern itself with their own way. If it is not effective, but it shows you there is a way to go, ma'am.
First, you have the burden to prove what is so good about the governments in Papua when you are still being arrested inside of it and told to do whatever you want to do inside of it, right? We don't think so. That's your burden, UGM. But secondly, my second contribution, why then, principally, violent revolution is justified to break out from the colonialism that happens inside of Indonesia. We think this is colonialism, Mr. and Madam Chair. When you extract our free port access and do not give us anything in return, when we get guns instead to say that we need to protect ourselves, we think it is justified under two reasons. The first reason is because we think we need to get a revenge towards Indonesia. We know this is a very harsh word, but this is what we got when we cannot do other things. But the second reason why it is principally okay for you to be violent is because we think violent revolution is a normal phase of getting independence. This is what also Indonesia did back in the colonialism of the Dutch, for example. And we are allowed to do that, and you are allowed to do that. Even you use Papuan people to become one of your army to do that. Therefore, if we now have like a violent revolution, it is the same right that at least Indonesia should grant to us, because that is what they are taking us back from inside of the status quo. We think we need to do this. And at the very worst case scenario, that even if the seceding do not succeed and we lost in the war, at least we send a message that we are not going to be shut down just because you told us to eat rice. We do not eat rice, Mr. and Madam Chair. That is how different us is, and that it is important for you to recognize that. We're very proud to perform.
Thank you, Stella, as Prime Minister. Now to open the case of opposition, I'd like to welcome Lady as the leader of opposition. Thank you.